In this video, we're going to talk about emotional intelligence. This is about a 22-minute video, and it is followed up by another video, which is a TED Talk on self-awareness, and then self-reflection, which includes having a conversation with someone else about your self-awareness and your relationship management. So, emotional intelligence is um, one of the most important tools you'll use as in your role as a peer support person. um, you really are using yourself as the support tool. And so we'll talk about how to increase your emotional intelligence. And I want to start by saying that empathy for others and for yourself is key. So a lot of times in therapy sessions, I ask clients if they have any self compassion. And so this is about essentially being able to acknowledge and recognize and validate and process your own feelings. Give yourself space to be human, to feel however you feel about things. And then you have a better ability to regulate yourself if you're aware of what's happening for you emotionally. So we are emotional beings, and our intelligence related to our emotionality is really a hugely important aspect of the work you'll do in peer support. I think it's important to note that it's common to um, be extremely good at reading others and being able to watch for behaviors and indicators. And a lot of things revolve around safety and de escalation and gaining cooperation from others on calls and such, but certainly less emphasis. And in fact, an emphasis on ignoring your own feelings and needs and such, as I said, with that idea of overriding your nervous system is more common. So it does not always go hand in hand to have really strong ability to read others. That does not mean that a person has a strong ability to read themselves. So this is maybe kind of a new concept for some and not at all for others. Many of you, I'm sure, have very high emotional intelligence, but we're going to walk through it anyway because it's really such a key piece of your role in peer support. So, emotional intelligence, or EQ, is the ability to understand, use, and manage your own emotions in a positive way to relieve stress, communicate effectively, empathize with others, overcome challenges, and diffuse conflict. So, there's four main attributes of emotional intelligence. One of them is self management. So, this is essentially how well developed you have become, and you can always become more developed in this way. Your ability to control impulsive feelings and behaviors. This includes your ability to manage your emotions in healthy ways, to take initiative, follow through on commitments, and adapt to changing circumstances. So, someone with a high emotional intelligence can do all those things. Essentially, self mastery is what you're working towards. It is really an incredible thing. And for anybody with a growth mindset, like you probably have because you signed up for this class, it's really one of the hardest things to do. Self awareness is recognizing your own emotions and how they affect your thoughts and behaviors. So, there will be a separate video on that in particular. Social awareness is having empathy, understanding the emotions, needs, and concerns of other people. Often, law enforcement are already, and first responders are very good at that. Relationship management is knowing how to develop and maintain good relationships, communicate clearly, inspire and influence others, work well on a team, and manage conflict. So, what an incredible list of complicated skills and knowledge and understanding that makes up emotional intelligence. So, emotional intelligence affects all different areas of your life. It affects your performance at work, your physical health, your mental health, your relationships, and your social intelligence. So you can probably think of examples of someone in your life who is very emotionally intelligent. Not only can they read others, but they have such a good sense of themselves. They can really tune into and adjust to whatever situation they're in and use themselves in an agile way, adjust to different environments, um, and has a solid understanding of how they are perceived by others, how their verbal and nonverbal cues um, affect others, and really having a strong grasp on all of these things is just an incredible tool. You can also probably think of an example of someone who has very low emotional intelligence. Um, and that would be somebody who is sort of like a bull in a china shop. So if you imagine somebody kind of going about things in a way that rubs people the wrong way and maybe is insulting and they may not realize it, or some are and choose to do it anyway, of course, are aware that they do that. But you can probably think of those who don't really understand how they come off to others and how they are perceived. And really are those folks are not capitalizing on the power that they really could have if they would harness it and really get to know themselves very well. Your physical health is affected by your emotional intelligence and your mental health, which are, of course, intertwined inextricably. So your fight, flight, or freeze system can get engaged from stress. And if someone doesn't understand that they're having a stress response, some people are actually pretty unaware of that, and then can hold stress chronically. So some people are chronically stressed and hypervigilant in law enforcement and are aware of it, and it hurts them and they want to do something about it. Others just sort of accept it as functioning because it creeps up on a person very slowly in many ways. And then it can also be thought of as, well, we're all like this, and they can see that about themselves and others around them. And just sort of normalize it instead of recognizing how much of a toll it takes on your brain and your body and your relationships and all of those things. Emotional intelligence, of course, affects relationships. It's really incredibly important for relationships. And it's really important for your social intelligence, your ability to read rooms, to read people, to know your role and your ability to do what in different circumstances is really important. And so not that you need to use yourself as a tool in this way all the time, but the capacity for it is neat to build on and just get to know really well. The key skills for building your EQ or emotional intelligence and improving your ability to manage emotions and connect with others are made up of 4 things. So we mentioned these on the last slide. So self-management, how good are you at mastering yourself? How aware are you of yourself? How good is your social awareness? And then how well do you manage relationships and have stable, satisfying relationships with other people? So IQ is unchangeable. If any of us were to take an IQ test, had we taken it 20 years ago, or we take it today, or in another 20 years, it would really stay relatively the same. Emotional intelligence, or EQ, is changeable. And so that's why it's really fun to think about and get to know yourself better, and then be able to use yourself as a tool much better and problem solve, find places where you get caught up, where you lack emotional regulation, and then be able to fine tune those things. High levels of hope allows for creativity and determination. So, an important factor of a high EQ is a high level of hope. And this allows you also then to have a sense of creativity, imagination, which allows you to come up with creative problem solving for yourself, for others. It allows you to think in a non-linear way. In addition, I'm sure you can think in a very linear way. Um, it allows you to recognize and work within the gray area of things, not just in a black and white way. And then that can lead to determination as well. So determination is what allows you to get things done, motivates you, and whatnot. Some would say, and I would agree, that the increasing chaos in the world is largely driven, if not entirely driven, by unregulated emotions. So if there's one thing that I wish the world could have more of, it would be emotional intelligence. And so people who are highly emotionally intelligent tend to be the best at building bridges between folks who don't understand each other or don't agree. And, I think we could all agree that the world could use a lot more of that. So it's certainly a very important aspect of work as a therapist. So sometimes those who go into a helping profession or a service profession where you're very externally oriented towards others, some people do that with very good ability to take a self inventory and acknowledge how they feel and use themselves very wisely and purposefully. And others are fairly blind to themselves. And this is not just for law enforcement, it's for therapists and other care providers and service professionals as well. Some people even go into those fields in order to distract themselves from their own inner world. And it can be a pretty effective tactic to always be thinking about those outside yourself and not really dive very deep into what's happening in your own mind and heart. So that fight, flight, freeze response when you feel stress can lead us astray. So we can have a stress response when we don't really actually need it. We can also have it in a disproportionate way to what's actually happening. So this would be when you carry the weight of past stressors, when that container has something in it and that you are that container for emotion and you bring it wherever you go. That is how something seemingly small can be overreacted to by our stress response system, because it isn't just that event or experience that we're reacting to, it's the weight of what we're carrying around. So awareness of our baggage and our weight and what's filling that container at any one time is really important to take inventory of. Do everything you can, of course, to keep that as clear as you can, and then have the healthiest approach towards being as regulated as possible. So interestingly, delayed gratification is critical to high emotional intelligence. So somebody who really seeks out immediate gratification is going to tend to have lower emotional intelligence. So this goes along with addiction and substance abuse and behavioral abuse type disorders. And the reason is because when somebody is really highly wired for that dopamine rush, they are likely going to have more trouble with delayed gratification. They want that immediate rush or the immediate sensation of pleasure or even pain sometimes, just because it's something to feel. So on the other end of the spectrum is this ability to have delayed gratification. So there's actually studies that have been done on young children, about 4 and 5 and 6 years old. And what they found in the studies, which were long-term studies is the children who could have, they were in a room, each child was in a room, sometimes alone, sometimes with another child. It didn't make too much of a difference, but they would set the child down at a table and give each child a marshmallow. And the person running the experiment would say, if you choose to, you can choose to have this marshmallow right now and eat it. Or if you wait 5 minutes and I come back in and you haven't eaten the marshmallow, I will give you a second marshmallow. And then you'll end up being able to eat two. And so what they found was that the children, even at that very young age of 4, 5, 6 years old, the children who were able to wait for that second marshmallow and delay their gratification ended up being more successful in life. And so this is a wiring. There's so much of our brain development that happens in actually the first 15 months, but or 18 months, but certainly the first 6 years, that there's a lot that we can tell about personality, the development of impulse control, and a lot of that is actually pretty well set by about 7 years old. It's certainly not a lost cause at that point. There's more that can be done, in a large way, but very interesting to see those results and just how powerful they were and how they played out later on. So emotional intelligence is one of these things. I've mentioned confidentiality as an incredibly important principle of peer support, which you're now aware of. And then the most important tool that you have is your use of self. So yourself as the tool. And this runs very parallel to the therapy world and counselors, because it's the same thing. So we use ourself as the tool. All of the knowledge that we have about, different disorders and mental illnesses and treatment types and all of that is good and great, and we need that. But what we need more than anything is this emotional intelligence and the ability to build rapport and trust. So the vast majority of a person's progress in therapy, as far as how much you rely on your therapist, is based on the trust you have with them. So success is highly based on trust. And so that'll be the same way between you and your peers as your peer support person. And one of the ways that you will be trusted and are trusted is because of how well you understand yourself and your ability to use yourself in a very regulated way and in a very specific and intentional way, versus that bull in a china shop type person who you may have in mind. So a lot of our EQ is originally gained from our experiences as a kid. The way we're set up genetically is a portion of it, but the majority is whatever we learned growing up. So you probably had people who helped you be more self-aware, and you probably had that modeled for you by somebody or a few people. And then you picked up on those skills. You may have worked on it yourself intentionally as well, which of course helps improve that. And then there's always more room for growth. So of course, right? I mean, for myself too, with my education and training and years and years in this work, I am also a parent. I am in relationship to others, and there is always more. The world changes around us, and it presents another challenge for us to grow and build on our emotional intelligence. And so certainly the last couple of years have been the greatest challenge probably in our lives in this way. But maybe not. You may have had something else even more significant that required these levels of emotional intelligence. So good stuff to think about here. The next video is going to talk about building self-awareness. And then there's a self-reflection activity. You're going to do where it's a Google form, but you don't need to fill in on that form. The questions are laid out in that format on the form, but you will just be taking notes in wherever you're keeping your notes for this class. So that's something that we will circle back to in our in-person training days when we meet. And we can go from there with it. Please bring any questions that you have as well. And if you want to do more reading, Daniel Goleman is a good one. He has written books called Emotional Intelligence and a newer one, Emotional Intelligence 2.0. You can also find him if you want to listen to or watch videos of him speaking. If you just search in YouTube, that's an option. If you want to look into this anymore, that would be lovely. I believe he also has a podcast, Daniel Goleman does, so you could search for that on whatever platform you use. And I look forward to chatting more about this. I'm hoping you get something really good out of the self-reflection after you listen to the next video, because this will be an area that you will really feel a benefit from in your life, since relationships are so important to us and our health and our happiness. And of course, your ability to be a huge support to your peers is going to be benefited as well. So they will benefit from your work on this too. So thank you so much for your time, your time and attention here. And I will chat with you soon.